Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm painting Welcome Home Heroes. I'm going to be sipping on some Pinot Grigio, and if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, green oxide, fire red, chrome yellow, ultramarine blue, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using some tools today. I have a piece of chalk for doing some sketching and outlines and stuff. And then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 10 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch up those sizes as well, but that's what I'll be using. If you're going to be painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and all good stuff in between. So that's down there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is I'm going to be painting my background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, yellow, and white. And as you can see, I have my canvas going in the portrait format, so that's the way I'll be painting mine today. What I'm going to be doing first is I'm going to be pre-mixing myself a tan color for the wall. That's going to be our background. You can certainly have your background or your wall whatever color you would like, but I'm just going to go for a light neutral tan kind of color. So I know that I want to use some of this brown later, so I don't want to use all of it to mix my background. So I'm going to kind of separate some of my brown and just put it over here for now. I'm going for this light tan color similar to what I have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some white to my brown, and I'm also going to add a touch of yellow to it. So I don't want a ton of yellow in my wall color, but I want it to be a little on the more beige side as opposed to just a light tan. So the yellow will help to make it look, you know, have a little bit more of a warmth to it. So I'm going to add just a touch more white. I also know that these colors will get a little bit darker as they dry, so I'm trying to plan for that as I'm pre-mixing my color. And I do want to make sure that I have mixed enough for my entire wall. So you don't want to just mix a teeny tiny bit. You want to make sure that you have enough in your on your palette to fill that entire wall. So this is about where I'm going with my color, and again, you can certainly make yours lighter or darker or purple or green or whatever color you'd like, but that's about where I'm headed with mine. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to initially kind of outline an area where I'm going to have my sign up at the top. So I'm going to just do a very uneven kind of rustic rectangle. And this is going to be just kind of segregating where I want my sign to be. So you can see I'm kind of wobbling the edges of it, so that will be painted with brown later. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the entire exterior with this wall color. So you can have your sign bigger or smaller, or it can be round, it can be whatever shape that you would like it to be. You could even paint the entire canvas and then paint your sign on top of it, but I'm choosing to do it this way because I'm going to use the white background of the canvas to help my sign look more like wood and have a little bit more wood grain to it. So you can choose to do it whichever way that you want. But what I'm doing, because I want to have kind of a nice even coat on my background, you'll see that I just kind of keep going back and forth, getting kind of thinning out my paint to make sure that I have, or thinning it out so I don't have any really thick spots, but also to make sure that I have a nice good full coverage throughout the whole background. I know that because I'm using this light color that has a lot of white in it, I should theoretically get pretty good coverage with one coat. But if you're using a different color paint that might have a little bit more translucency to it, you might end up wanting to do a second coat on your background to get just a nice smooth wall color. You could also have your wall lighter or darker on one side to insinuate that there's a light source of some kind in the room with this still life image that we're painting. But I'm just going for a solid color on my background. You could certainly make yours, again, whatever color you'd like. Maybe you want striped wallpaper behind it. Maybe you want it to look similar to a wall that's in your house and you've got other stuff on your wall. So just have fun with it. And if you feel that you need to do a second coat, feel free to do so. You could just let your canvas dry and then just do a second coat on top of it, and that'll give you a nice even coverage. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your wall painted, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer to our sign. I'm going to be using my large brush and I'm going to be using just brown paint. So I want this to kind of be the start of like a wood grain kind of sign. You might, again, want yours to be a solid color. You might choose to do something different, but I'm going to utilize my translucent brown and my white background to start what I'm going to call a wood grain to it. So I'm going to be using primarily a left to right brush stroke. I have a firm bristle brush, so my bristle brush is going to allow me to almost kind of streak this brown on here, which is going to provide me with light spots and dark spots. The center's pretty easy. The tough part comes when you're doing the left to right edges. I don't want it to look like I've just painted a line on that left edge, so what I do is I'm going to get it nice and wet like this, and then I pull the paint to the right. Or conversely, on the other side, I'll pull it to the left while it's still wet. And then that way I get rid of the appearance of an outline of sorts that I originally painted on there. So I've got my outline like that, and then while the paint's still wet, I pull it this way. So that clears me from having a vertical stripe on that side. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paint the rest of the sign. And I am not using a lot of paint, so this way, again, I will have some light spots and dark spots throughout the sign, and it's going to provide me with an easy way to start the appearance of wood grain. And then we're going to actually use our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this all nice and done, you can put this large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your piece of chalk and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw some outlines for our masks. I'm going to be using my piece of chalk, and I do want to kind of forewarn you that before you start this step that you want to make sure that your canvas is dry. So, you could take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you could find some kind of fanning method with your mouth or your paper towel or however you want to do it that way. Or you could do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer to get it dry. Maybe yours is already dry by now, but if it's not, just get it dry for the next step. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to be doing 5 masks. You might want to do 1, you might want to do 2, you might want to do 7, however many that you want to do is great. I'm going to make, I want mine kind of, because I'm going to do 5, I'm going to have 5 pegs on my sign. So I'm going to put my pegs in place first, and then that's going to dictate to me where my masks are going to hang in this main wall area. So for me, I want my pegs kind of equally spaced apart. So how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to visually pick a center point on my towards the bottom of my sign, somewhere in through here, and then I'm going to go near the edge, make myself just these little circles. These are going to be where the pegs are, and then I'll do one in between those. So that, without measuring, gives me something that's kind of equally spaced. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to draw my outline of my masks. I have them all different widths, different heights. You can have an assortment of them in different kinds of shapes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my two that are kind of laying on top of all of the other ones, and then I'll make the ones that are going to be looking like they're behind. So I know that I have my second one in from the left that's going to look like it's on top of the rest. So I'm going to come maybe about 2 or 3 inches down from my peg, make myself a horizontal line, and then I'm just going to kind of bring this down in a vertical fashion, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm about 3 inches away from the bottom for this one, but the others can be certainly different than that. So this is going to be one on the outside. I'm also going to have this exterior one on the outside, so I think I'm going to have this one maybe a little bit, maybe somewhere in through here. This one's going to be a little bit past the edge of that, and then I'm going to have this one maybe a little bit more slender and coming down a little bit farther. So I'm just making long rectangles. You can certainly do whatever kind of shape that you would like. I'm going to have 2 in through here, so of course they're going to be with these pegs in through here. So I think I'm going to do this one next, and this one's going to be maybe a little bit higher than this one. And I'm watching my peg to kind of get it equally spaced from left to right. I'm going to bring this one down in through here, and I think this one's going to come like this. And then I'll have another one coming down from here. This one's going to be pretty big. I think I'll have this one come in the tallest in through here, bring it down like this. It's going to sit behind these two. Then I'm going to just kind of visually travel down to here, bring this down. I'm going to have this one the farthest one down. So this again, bring it down here, and then I'll just kind of bring it across like this. And I'm working with chalk, so if I want to make any modifications or changes, I can certainly do that. And then I have this one over here, so I think I'm going to have this one again hanging over the corner of my sign a little bit, or my hooks. And then maybe this one comes over to here and down here a little bit. And of course, like I said, you can modify yours whatever way you want to. And then we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got these outlines done, tweak them all you want, put your chalk away, get your medium brush out, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're doing the base coat to our masks. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I will be using every color on my palette because I've got them all different colors, and I'm going to be mixing a couple of custom colors. So how I'm going to do this on each one, and again, you can have yours whatever colors that you'd like to, but how I'm going to approach it is I'm going to be doing a solid color for each one, and then I add a little bit of a highlight to show maybe a couple little wrinkles in the middle. So I'm going to be going for my masks that are farthest away from us first, and then moving towards the front. So I'll be doing this one and this one first, then I will do this one, and then I will do these two, because these two are on the outside. So I'm going to do this one first. I'm loading my brush with red paint, and I'm going to be going right up to the edge of my chalk marks. I'm even going to be making my chalk marks disappear as I go through the process. I'm using a good amount of paint on my brush so I can just get a nice thick layer throughout the mask, making sure I go all the way to the edges. Your masks might grow a little bit throughout this process, which is totally fine because, you know, who's to say what size they need it to be? So once I've got my base coat on it, oh, see that mask's gonna grow a little bit because I had a lot of paint on my brush. Once I've got the base coat on here, I'm not gonna wash the brush. What I'm gonna do is I'm just going to pick up a little bit of either white or whatever you want as the lighter shade of that particular color. So for red, I could just do white as my highlight color, but I don't want it to turn pink on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, without washing my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit more red, yellow, and a touch of white. And this is going to give me a little bit of a highlight in the middle of that mask to indicate maybe there's a couple of creases. I'm adding the yellow so it doesn't turn too pink on me. I'm putting a little bit of a highlight down maybe at the edge of the mask just to show that maybe it's popping out a little bit. But again, you don't have to do much of anything. It's just we're giving a little illusion there. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going on to my next color or my next mask. So for me, it's going to be this one, and I'm just going to do a medium gray. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my white paint, it can even be some of my dirty white paint, and add a tiny touch of black paint into it to just get myself a medium gray. You could have yours any tonal value that you want. I just want to make sure that I've got enough, because this is a pretty big mask, so I want to make sure that I've got enough paint mixed on my palette to do this entire mask. So once I've got my shade of gray that I would like, I'm just going to take it. I don't have to wash my brush, obviously, and I'm just going to paint in that entire mask. So I'm using kind of a larger round brush, which allows me to hold quite a bit of paint on the brush itself, and get these seemingly smoother edges to it. So if you want to cover a good amount of area like this, and have some clean edges involved, you could certainly use a large flat brush if you wanted to, but I like the control of maneuvering the tip of my brush where I want to inside of the corners and stuff. So these large round brushes really work well for me for this particular kind of process. And then once I've got my color on there, I'm not going to wash my brush. For me, my highlight color for this one is just going to be white. So I just picked up a bit of white. I'm doing a couple of little streaks down that middle, and then maybe a couple of little lighter spots over on the edges. That's just going to indicate that it has maybe a little wrinkle on the edge of sorts, and of course you could make that more dramatic if you wanted to, but that's going to work for me. The next one I'm going to do right here is going to be my white one. So I just washed and dried my brush. So for the white one, I'm clearly going to use white paint, but I know that my white paint is a little see-through or translucent, so it is going to use the background color as part of its the dimension to it. So I know that I'm going to want to use highlights on the white, but the only lighter thing I can go than white is white, right? So white is the lightest that you can go. So if you have a darker background like I do right now, you can utilize the darkness from behind to give you those duller spots, which would in essence provide the dimension for you. So you might not have to come back and do a highlight of sorts on it. So I've got a little bit of tan showing underneath, and I can just pick up more white down the center. And if your white is really white, you could go in the opposite direction and pick up some of your gray to provide a shadow of sorts in between those little wrinkles. So whatever way works for you is totally fine. Just going for a little bit of a ripple there. Then the next one that I'm going to do, I think I'm going to do this one over here. So this is going to be a dark blue. So I just washed and dried my brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm taking my ultramarine blue and just some of it, and I'm going to add a tiny touch of black paint. This way it's going to turn it into a nice navy blue. And you can certainly, or a dark midnight blue, you can certainly make it as light or as dark as you want, but just be careful adding that black, because the black will very easily take over, and then it's just going to look black. So once you've got this desired shade that you want, you can just load it on to this particular mask. And again, I'm using a good amount of paint on my brush, and if you run into any wet paint from the mask next to it, just roll with it. Just paint it right in to the mask that you're working on. And I'm going all the way to the edges, trying to keep kind of a clean edge to it, so that way it looks like a piece of cloth. It can be ripply, but as far as my paint cleanliness on the edge of the line, on the edge of it, I'm trying to keep it nice and clean, where it doesn't look like it's blended. It just looks like it's a distinct line. If I was to make it look like it was blended into the background, then it wouldn't look like it's a piece of cloth. So I've got this going on in through here, and then once I've got my nice layer on there, I'm going to just pick up a tiny bit of white, because I still have the blue on my brush and my paint is probably still a little moist on my canvas, and I'm going to add those bits of highlights in through the top, in through the center. And if you want blended in at all, you can certainly just kind of gently rub it into the neighboring colors. And then we just have one more, which is going to be the military one. And I'm doing these colors just as a representation of the professions that I feel that these masks are representing. But you could, again, certainly use whatever base coat that you want that you feel represents that particular profession. So for this one, I'm going to go for just like an army camouflage military green type of color. So I have my regular green, and I'm going to add some brown to it. And you can use up all of your green here if you want to, because I don't have anywhere else in the painting that I'm going to be using it for. And I am going to add a tiny bit of white too, just because I want to make sure that it's not too see-through. So I've got my brownish green color that I'm going for, just making sure it's brown enough for me. I want it to really look like it could be hidden off in the woods or the forest somewhere. So I'm getting a nice rustic, natural kind of green going on here. And then once I've got my desired shade, I'm going to go ahead and paint this one in. And this one again is on the exterior of the white one and the gray one. So I just want to make sure that I bring it all the way to those edges. And by the time you're done this step, all of your chalk marks for these masks, the edges, the outlines that we did, should be hidden. So you might need to go back and either erase some of them if any of them are still showing, and you can erase them with just a little bit of water. And you might find that some of the colors of the masks you might want to do a second coat on, or just revise them a little bit as they're drying. Sometimes they turn out a little bit differently than you thought that they were going to be. So if you feel that you need to do any little touch-ups or dry in any, feel free to do so. And now that I've got my main color on there, I'm not washing my brush. I'm just picking up a little bit of white paint and adding those little wrinkle highlights, maybe a little down at the edges, in through here. And then if I want it to blend in at all, I can just sit here and get it to blend in a bit. And then we are going to be utilizing, let's see, we're going to use this same brush for the next step. No, let's use our large brush. We're going to use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your base coat for your masks on, you can put your medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing our highlights and our shadows on our sign. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and the colors I'm using are white, black, and brown. And through this step, you're probably going to lose your chalk marks for your pegs. Don't worry about that. They were just there to give you a good eyeball marker for where you want your signs. So, or your masks. So how I'm going to do this is I am never going to have too much paint on my brush. I'm going to be using, when I'm on top of the sign, I'm going to be using a dry brush technique, which means not a lot of paint, and I'm going to be just kind of rubbing it in here and there to give myself maybe some little streaks of the grains of the wood. And then I'm going to be doing a shadow down on the exterior left and bottom on the wall from the sign. So I'm going to start with my highlights. I'm going to put a tiny bit of white and brown on my brush at the same time. So I have white and brown. I'm having my light source up in the top right hand vicinity of this whole painting, or of the room where these are hanging. So I'm going to do a lot of my highlight is going to be up on this right hand side. And I want this to just kind of look like wood. So I'm really just kind of streaking in these almost to me like swirl kind of marks, which will sometimes show like the little knot holes in the wood, or the grain, the wood grain itself. And I'm not really paying much attention to my my marks for my hooks, because I know that I can just refine those when I'm ready to. So once I've got that on there, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black and brown. I didn't wash my brush, and this is where I can sit and I can make, oh, maybe just a little bit more black so we can get some little marks in here. So I can make those little almost those knot marks if I want to. So I can take my black paint and brown, I have black and brown on my brush, and just kind of accentuate some of these little areas of the wood, and that's going to make it look a little bit more realistic. And you can tweak this and have fun with it as much as you want, but that's looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to make sure I don't have white on my brush. So I'm going to wash and dry it, because I'm going to do my shadow around the left and bottom. And so I washed and dried my brush, and I'm going to put a little bit of black and brown on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to dip my brush a little bit in water, just the tip of my brush, and then I take it and I pat it on my paper towel. So this gives me a little bit of water in here, so my I'll be able to keep moving my shadow and making it look nice and natural. I do want it pretty dark. The farther away you make this shadow come from the object, the more thick that object is going to look. So you can have it really close to it, or if you bring it farther away. So I'm going to do a little bit of a diagonal mark up in that top left hand side, and then I'm just kind of pushing my brush into the side of my sign. So I'm bringing this down into the bottom left, and then I'm going to come across this bottom. So I feel as though my shadow is a little bit too see-through, so I'm going to add more paint to my brush. So my shadow is being see-through because I have the water on my brush. So if you find that yours is not dark enough and you're seeing too much of the wall behind it, you can just add a little bit more paint to your mixture. And I'm just bringing this all the way over to the left-hand side. And then if you need to do any modifications, just, you know, wipe your brush. You can add more water to your brush. I feel this part kind of dipped down a little bit too much, so I just added a bit of water, and I can just kind of push it back up where I want it to. And then worst case scenario, if something went really wrong on you, you can bring back some of your wall color and just add that into, you know, pull your shadow back a little bit if you want to. But you want to make sure that it is dark enough that you can see that it is different than your actual sign. So if you needed to, you could also add a little bit of a highlight on the edge of your sign. So I just added a bit more white and brown, and you could make the edge of the sign a little bit lighter as well. So know that you can kind of tweak that the sign to make the shadow pop out even more if you wanted to. So you can play with that as much as you'd like to. We are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your sign all nice and created here, and you've got enough texture and wood grain involved, you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our hooks on the sign here. So I'm not making these very fancy. I'm just making them like little buttons. I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to be using brown, black, and white. And how I'm doing this is I'm starting with black and brown on my brush, and I'm just going to, if your marks kind of disappeared, just kind of find your center spot above this mask in through here, maybe go above it or into your sign, maybe about an inch or so. Make yourself a little circle, and I'm going for rustic here, so my circles are probably not going to all be the same size. They're not going to be the same color. We're just going to have fun with this. So this one would be directly up from here. Yours, you might be able to see yours at your chalk marks at this point, but I'm just kind of guiding you where mine is, and I'm just taking the tip of my brush and just kind of spinning it in a circular motion till they're all kind of about the same size. And then once I've got them on there, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up brown and white paint on my brush at the same time, not much, and I'm going to do a little smudge of a highlight. So I'm really just going to kind of smush my brush in on the top and do a little bit of a curve to it. And you might find you want yours lighter or darker. I'm using kind of a wet on wet technique here. So if you wanted it more bright, you could add a little more of a little sparkle with a bit of white. And then we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your little hooks on here, you can wash and dry that medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to be doing the symbols on our masks. I'm going to be using my small brush, even though I said I was going to use my medium brush. I've changed my mind yet again. I'm going to use my small brush to do so. So just keep in mind as you are creating your symbols, I am going for a kind of a blanket emergency rescue hero message here, but you may find that you have other people that you want to symbolize as your heroes. Maybe your hero is a teacher, or your hero is your mom, or somebody else. This could be a representation for the hero in your life. So I'm going to be representing EMTs. I've got military, and of course every branch of the military in every country has a different symbol. I'm going for a generic symbolic kind of stripe that they put on their sleeves or on their clothing. You could go for the country's flag. It could be a different country. You could really, you know, explore your idea of the symbolism of military protection. I've got a red cross for medical, for nurses. You could do a red heart, or you could, you know, put some kind of other symbol of the medical field on there. This one is going to represent the fire department or firemen. So I'm going to put a flame on mine, but you could put a fireman's hat or a truck, or, you know, something else that might symbolize that particular profession. And this one is going to be the police force. So I'm going to have what I refer to as like a shield, like the shield, their badge of sorts. I'm going to have a symbol that represents that, but you could of course have whatever other symbols that you'd like on all of these masks. So for me to paint this easily, I'm going to actually turn my canvas so these symbols are upright to me, because when the masks are hanging, they're going to be at the sideways view. So I'm going to turn my canvas like this, so that way I have an easier time to paint these. I'm just going to kind of start, let's see, where I think I'm going to start at the military one, because this is the only one that I'm going to make a custom color for. Well, I'll use that same color in the police one too, but I'm going to make, like, in my head, it's going to resemble a metallic gold kind of color. So I'm going to be using, I think I'm going to be using lots of colors on this stuff. I'm using blue, white, yellow, red, black maybe. I don't know. I'll call them out as I'm making them. So my metallic gold type color is definitely going to have some yellow and some brown in it, because to me, a representation of metallic gold has green or yellow and brown in it. So I'm going somewhere in through here. I'm going to put a little bit of white in it so it's not so see-through. And again, you could do yellow, you could do black, you could do whatever color representation you would like for these type of pinstripes of sorts that I'm going to put on it. So this is where I'm going for my metallic gold type color, and I'm just going to do three. They seemingly look like V's, so I want mine kind of equally spaced, so I'm gonna just kind of make a dot where I want the bottoms to be, and then I will make my my lines like this, just so I can have them kind of equally spaced apart. And this is one of those steps that if you want yours to be very detailed, you could certainly take a lot of time to create the design work that goes into these representational symbols that I'm doing. But I am really just going for something that is going to send a message as opposed to something that needs to be put on a gallery wall. This is something that really is just meant to be very meaningful to people, and if you want to make yours into something that is perfectly executed, you can certainly do that as well. Now that I've got the color on there, I'm just dipping my brush in some white so I can have these little almost three-dimensional highlights on it. Maybe this is of a embossed kind of material or something. So now that I've got that done, I'm just going to wash and dry my brush because I'm going to also, let's see, I'm going to move down to this one, I guess. So this one is going to be my EMT. I'm going to be using my ultramarine blue. I'm going to be creating their symbol, which I believe is called the Star of Life. And it is, from what I've kind of understood, it is a universal symbol. I know that I can't remember where I read that it originated from, but it is used in a lot of emergency medical rescue type of professions to symbolize life, I guess. These are our people who come to us in that moment of real need. So I'm doing a vertical stripe like that, and then it's in essence kind of an X that that comes off of the center. So I'm going to just kind of try and make myself an X like this, and I'm doing it just with blue paint, which is the iconic color for it. You can do varying shades of blue, and again, if this is something that you want to have very detail oriented, feel free to do so. I know that I'm going to just have mine more on the representational side, but again, you could certainly have yours really nice and detailed and perfectly executed. I know that a lot of the uniforms that I was seeing with this particular symbol, they had a white outline around the logo of sorts. So I'm going to put a little bit of a white, kind of a free-spirited detail on them in a second here. But right now I'm just kind of getting my symbol on here, and then you can do any little details that you want. So if I get my symbol on here like this, and then I can just pick up a little bit of white paint, and if I wanted to just kind of add these really neat just accents of white along it, that will definitely tell the story of that particular logo, and it's going to give you a great representation of this profession. So once I've got this one done, and again, just have fun with it, make it your own. I like that. I might do another coat of blue on it once it dries. Sometimes, again, when these colors dry, you find that you want to do another coat, but that's good for now. I'm going to go ahead and go up to this one in through here. This is going to be my medical nurse representation, and I'm kind of staggering these symbols. You could certainly put yours in whatever format that you would like. I'm just going to go right across this area in through here. I'm just doing a big red cross. So, and I'm picturing it to, you can put it on the side of your mask, you can put it in the corner of your mask. Again, you can really formulate these designs wherever you'd like to. But I want a nice big representation here. So we're going to put a big wide cross here. The red cross comes to the emergency, comes to the rescue in so many important situations. So we definitely have to represent their efforts, and nurses and doctors and everybody else. So many heroes in this world. I should probably be doing 462 paintings with different symbols of all the different types of heroes that we have. I'm going to move on to my to my fire one. So I'm going to start this one with white, and I'm going to be making myself the representation of a flame over here. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a couple of white outlines, and then I will add my yellow type of color to really give it a nice fire representation. And I'm creating a generic representation of a very typical logo that a lot of firehouses and a lot of emergency facilities will use to represent the symbol of fire rescue. So you could certainly kind of embellish this as you see fit or as you'd like to. But once I've got that white on there, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a bit of yellow. And I did the white first because I knew that the yellow was a bit see-through, and the white behind it is definitely helping to make it the yellow pop more. So once I've got that on there, and of course you could add some more red to it, or if you bumped into your white edge of your mask here, you can certainly modify that. And then I'm gonna, oh, you know what? I think I want another little bump on my fire right in through here. Make it a little bit more full down at the bottom here, and then just kind of streak in a little bit more of the flame look. So that'll give it a nice representation. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do my policeman. So I'm going to use this same gold type of color as the makings of the badge of symbol. So I'm going to have mine starting up maybe in through here, and then I'm going to have the tip of it directly below, maybe close to the edge of the mask, something like that. I make those two dots so I can keep myself in control where I want these marks to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a little U here, another one on the other side. I want this to look pretty symmetrical, so I have to do it in a symmetrical kind of order. So I did that, and then I've got these two little pieces that kind of kick out over on the sides like this. And then once I have that, we have this edge to it that'll come down and kind of meet this point in through here. So I'm going to try and make the other side look the same. So in, kind of curved out, and then back in like this. And then I'll just color that center in with that metallic gold type of color. And once I've got my shape on here, I'm going to do, again, a nice little loose interpretation of an outline just to give it a nice stable logo type of image. And again, you might find that you want to do 1 or 2 layers on these things just to give them a little bit more coverage. I didn't wash my brush. I just picked up a bit of white paint, and I'm going to give myself these nice little highlights around the edges of this just to give it a bit more pop. And of course, you could embellish yours whatever way you'd like to. Maybe just kind of give it a little bit of shine in the middle. Maybe it's a shiny, nice badge of sorts in through here. And then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your emblems or your logos, designs on here and fully executed, you can turn your canvas back the correct way, get out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm painting shadows of my masks. So I'm going to use my medium brush. I'm going to be using black and brown paint, and I'm going to have shadows in many different places. So the first shadows that I'm going to do are going to be within each mask. I'm going to have little shadow holes for where the straps are going to be tied to. So that'll be one place that I have shadows. I will also have shadows coming from the mask onto either the wall or the neighboring mask. My light source is over to the right, so all of my shadows are going to be to the left and below each one of these objects. Then I will also have shadows of the straps. So I'm going to have, we will eventually have straps, but we're going to paint their shadows first. So we'll have shadows of the straps up and through here and down below on the wall. So we're going to first start with the ones on the masks. I'm going to put brown and black on my brush at the same time. And really all I'm going to do is smash myself a little bit of a hole or a little dark spot in the upper and bottom corners of each one of these masks. So once I start and I'm not doing a clean mark, I'm just kind of pushing my brush in there so it's on the messier side. Once I start feeling that I'm running out of paint, I'll have to reload, but this one, of course, we wouldn't see. It's hiding underneath there. But I'm just taking the tip of my brush and just kind of maneuvering it around a little bit so I have these darker spots. Oh, I guess I don't need to reload my brush on that one. So now that I've got all those little dark spots and we know where all of those areas are going to be for the strings to come out, now I need to do my edges or my shadows coming from my masks. So I know right now I have black and brown on my brush and I want it to be a little watered down. So I'm really just going to take my brush and just dip the tip in my water and then dab it on my paper towel. Similar to what I did with my bigger brush up on the sign itself. And I am not going to be doing anything. I'm not really thinking too hard about how wide my shadow is going to be. I just want it kind of right next to it. It's going to be a close type of shadow. So I've got my black and my brown on my brush. I'm going to go over here on the left-hand side of this one. And you might find that you need more paint. Like I feel like I need more paint. So every time I reload, I'm going to go black and brown with a little bit of white or a little bit of water, sorry, not white, water. And I'm just going to kind of go down the side on the left-hand side. And then I'm going to bring it in through this bottom area. And you can see I'm kind of keeping a similar line as the object itself, and I'm bringing it right up to the edge. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the next mask, which is on top of this one. So I'm going to go right on top of my design and having a touch of water on my brush, which you might opt to use. You can use a liquid medium or something to give it a little bit of translucency. That's why I'm using the water. So it looks a little bit see-through and you can actually see the colors underneath it, because a shadow is intended to just be a darker variation of whatever the surface is that it's on. So if I have a tan wall, my shadow should just be a little bit darker and you should be able to see the stuff through it, because the shadow is just a source of negative light that is cast upon the object next to it. So I'm just kind of tweaking that so it's a dark enough for me, and you can keep tweaking them as dark as you want. This one is not going to, the white is not going to cast a shadow upon here, and it's not going to cast a shadow upon the red, but it would cast a shadow underneath it. So I've got my shadow mixture. I think I need a touch more water on my brush because it's not see-through enough for me. There we go. And now that I've got that underneath there, and I'm going maybe about 1/4 of an inch wide, but you could certainly make yours wider or more narrow. My red one, again, light is over to the left, so I'm going to have a shadow on the wall to the left. I can't forget to do the top corner of this one either, but as I'm down here, I'm hitting it while I'm thinking about it. So I've got my shadow color right underneath it. I'm bringing it right up to the edge, making sure that I don't forget this up here, the corner up here. I knew this there was bound to be one area that I almost forgot, and it was up in this little corner here. So, oh, and the white one too. See, glad I came up here. So I need a little corner up into here that's cast upon that wall. And then this blue one is going to cast a shadow upon the red that's next to it. So I just reloaded my brush with my black, brown, and a touch of white or water. I keep saying white. If I said white accidentally, I'm sorry. I keep meaning to say water. So there we go. I've got that shadow on there, and then I'm going to just bring it across over in through here. And then I also need to do my shadows of my straps that we don't have yet. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that, because the straps are going to go on top of the shadow. So I didn't want us to have to paint around them. So we're going to do those now. So my strap shadows, if I want this to look three-dimensional, they're going to be close to here, and then they're almost going to pop off of this surface and skew over to the left. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So making sure I have a little bit of black, brown, and water. And again, you don't need much paint with this, because if you have that little bit of water, it'll make it look nice and see-through. So first I'm going to do the ones up at the top. So I'm going to just take my shadow color. That's a little dark, so I'm adding a touch more white, and just kind of going one for one just down to the edge of my sign. So something like this, and I painted on top of my little handle by accident, but that's okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and do these last two here. So I just reloaded my brush, something like this, and I'm putting, they're going to be around the hook, so you don't want them to touch up at the like a total V. The V part would be hidden behind that that hook. So something like this and like this. And now that I've got that part, as I jump off onto the wall, I'm going to make it a little bit to the left, which would indicate that the strap is away from the wall a bit. So if I go from this left-hand corner, even though I know it's a little bit left from there, and just kind of make myself a little bit of a mark in through here, and then as I do this one, I'm going to make it to the left of this area here. So I'm going to start somewhere up and through here and put that shadow a little bit to the left of there. And then I'm just going to keep going on this thought process. So this one's going to be to the left of this mark here, so somewhere down in through here, and then something like this. And I'm just going to kind of cruise along here, so it's going to go to the left of this mark and to the left of this mark. And they don't have to be exact, because one can be off the wall a little bit more than the other. So something like this, and then something like this, and then this one up here is probably going to go something like this. And again, I'm going to the left of where these markers are, and then something like this. And then I'm going to do the same thing down at the bottom where the bottom straps are. So if you need to reload your brush, go ahead and do so. Black, brown, and a little bit of water. And then I'm going to do the same thought process here. So wherever these two markers are, I'm putting it a little bit to the left below them. So I'm going to a little bit to the left, and I'm going to, and you can make these strap shadows as long as you want. I mean, they should kind of be relative to the top portion, but they might end up a little bit different. I think I'm going to need to reload my brush here. And if one shadow ends up a little bit lighter or darker than the other, so be it. And some may be a little bit more pointy. These bottom ones are rounded because they're not being pulled by the hook above. Oh, that was a little bit too far to the right, something like this. But they can be rounded in different ways than the one next to it, so don't feel like it has to be exactly the same as the one next to it. Oh, maybe this one goes off the canvas. How cool is that? I didn't know I was going to have one of those, but it makes sense to do so. And then I've got this one in through here. I can't forget my white one. So if I forget, I'm sorry. I'm remembering it now, but I just noticed I skipped it. So, oops, a little bit to the left of this one. Something like this. And then I've got that little tiny white one. Thankfully, I just remembered it. And then maybe this one is going to be, we're just going to see a little piece of it because it's behind that one. So we're going to just maybe, I got to kind of figure out where that would be, right about here. There we go. Something like that. And then we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows on, tweak them as much as you want, put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our straps. I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors I'm using are white and my wall color. So if you went for a different color wall, you just want to have, I'm in essence using white and tan. So brown and white will make a nice little tan for you. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do my little knots in through here first, and then we'll go ahead and make our straps, and then we'll do a little highlight, and then by the time we're done, we'll be all set. So what I'm going to do for the first pass on the whole thing is every time I pick up paint, I'm going to be picking up my wall color plus white. So that way I will have a variety of kind of light spots and dark spots throughout the strap without even really trying for it. So once I've loaded my brush with both of those colors, I'm going to do the little knot things, and I'm just kind of pushing and doing a little flick on them. So I'm going to push and do a little flick, and they can all come out in different directions. I'm not doing anything fancy, just giving myself a little something that would resemble a little piece of string coming out. And some of them you might not, oh, that was a big one. Some of them you might not even see. Some of them you will see very evident. So however you want to put them in there is totally fine. And then I'm going to reload my brush with white and my wall color, and I'm going to create myself some straps. So at the top, they're just going to be triangles, but again, some of that triangle or the top of it would be hidden behind your knob. So you don't really have to pay attention to your shadows, just you're really connecting your knob to your strings in through there. So I'm going to find my side of my knob and then just connect it to my string, but of course the string is on the other side of the mask itself. So you kind of stop it here. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this side. And my strings are pretty narrow, maybe 1/8 of an inch wide. Maybe yours are going to be more wide than mine. You can really have them all different widths. It's totally up to you. And this is where I kind of slow down a bit here, just so I can get them exactly where I want them to go. So something like this and something like this. So as I'm doing this, I'm really keeping my eye on the prize, which is from one mark to the next. So for me, my marks are my knob and these two dots. I try and kind of put blinders on to everything else because I know that if I was to start looking at the shadows, it might screw me up and I might go to a different dot or a different marker, and then it wouldn't necessarily look as realistic. So I'm just going to kind of keep my eye on each one of my prizes, and then if I have to do any tweaks or modifications after I've got the actual strap on, then I can certainly go ahead and do that. But right now I'm just kind of, and these upper ones are a little bit more difficult than the lower ones simply because I have to start and stop in two areas that are already painted. In the bottom, I just have one kind of loop that I'm making. So these top ones are take a little bit more time, maybe just because you have to actually concentrate a little bit more in order to kind of stop where you want to. And then this one is on top, which is great. So I'm right here. And I'm going to just go right, pretending like I'm not even seeing the red mask, because I know this would just lay right on top of it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do this other side, keeping my eye on this prize, which is down in through here. And then once I've got that, then again, I'm going to reload my brush with my wall color and white, and just make sure I've got these ones going accordingly. So when I do these, I'm going to I'm going to watch this loop and kind of stay in the same loop formation, but I want it to touch this bottom part. So I started directly below this knot, and as I come down here, I'm going to touch this bottom part in through here. I suppose you don't have to, but that's the way I'm seeing in my head. So then I'm going to go ahead and do this one, and of course this one is going off of the canvas a little bit. So I just have to imagine where it would kind of come back up in through here, and just get that formed like that. And then this one over here is going to be hiding behind the green mask. So I'm going to have to stop it in through here like that, and then I'm going to go ahead and do this one. This one is in front, so crossing it over on the bottom and then coming back up in through here. And then I got my last one over here. So again, I'm still just loading my brush with white and my wall color, like this. And then once I've got my white and my wall color started or done, I'm gonna just quickly wash my brush to get the wall color off. And I'm gonna pick up just white paint and do little streaks of highlights. So I'm just picking some arbitrary spots and doing a little streak of white to give these a little bit of a highlight going throughout them. So it might not be necessary for you to do. You could even do some in, you know, your little knots if you wanted to. If they weren't popping enough, you can just pop a tiny bit of white in there. And then I'll do the same thing on the straps on the bottom. These ones I'm gonna be more kind of thoughtful about where I put the highlight. I'm going to put the highlight on the bottom left. So I'm going to put that just a little streak of white on the bottom left, and that's going to kind of inform the viewer of where the light is coming from, even though we have that information in the shadow, but this just kind of adds that extra bit of information. And then we're going to use the same small brush for the next step. So once you have your straps all nice and created, you can wash and dry the small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our message or our words on our sign. I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using my wall color, white and black. You could certainly write your letters in any color that you want. I'm going to be freehanding and painting them on without a pre-drawing, but you could certainly use your chalk. Here's my chalk. You could certainly use your chalk and draw your letters on, or you can just go for it like I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna give you a couple of tips before I just whip mine out. One of my tips is definitely utilize moist paint when you do this. So put a touch of water in it or a little bit of liquid medium or something so it's nice and fluid as you're doing your letters. I do tend to suggest that you use your own penmanship as you're doing these letters, because that's the way you'll have the most success in getting them nice and uniform looking and making them your best, is using that same penmanship that you've been using all of your life. You can always fancy up like the first letters, so you can do your own penmanship throughout it and then do some nice squirrely swirls along the tips of the letters, and that would make it nice and fancy. As I'm doing this, I'm going to try and keep the height of my letters similar. So as I'm doing it, that's in my head how I get them to be uniform looking. But it's a sign that could be hand painted. So you could make yours diagonal, and therefore you wouldn't have to make them similar in size. You could really make this sign into whatever way you want. But my tips for what I'm going to be doing are try and keep your letters in essence the same size. I'm going to have my upper words smaller than the word hero down below. So no, as I'm going through it, I might fluctuate the size from the top letters to the bottom letters. Use moist paint. And another tip is to kind of use a brush with longer bristles. If your bristles are really short, they might not hold a lot of moisture, and you'll have to re-dip your brush a lot and might not get that fluid brush stroke. So if I haven't scared you enough, let's go. Let's make some letters. So I'm going to be using my wall color and white, but for my initial pass on these, but I definitely want them to be fluid. So I'm just adding a little bit of water to both of them, so that way I have a little more fluidity as I go ahead and do this. And just like my straps, every time I go to pick up paint, I'm going to be picking up both of those colors, making sure I've got them in my eye right now. So I'm going to do, my first word is going to be welcome, and I have a very shaky hand, so what I do is I brace myself on my canvas with my pinky, and I'm painting from the side, so if mine go a little wobbly, it's because I'm over here on the side. We'll try and get this on right. So I know that I want my welcome word to come about halfway over into my canvas. So I'm going to start with my W, And you'll see I go kind of fast as I'm doing these, just because that's, my brain works best when I do these letters, to just kind of go fast, because this is my penmanship. So if I can, well, it's my painting penmanship. I should clarify that. But I am, as I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep my letters kind of the same, a similar height. There's not too many of the same letters. I mean, I've got a couple of E's that I want to kind of look similar. So as I'm doing my E's, I want to keep them in the same kind of penmanship. So I've got my welcome, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my word home, and try not to misspell things. I'm kind of have had that happen to me once or twice, and I've had other people in my classes have that happen. So just be, you know, kind of cautious about how you're doing it. I had a little swoosh on that M in there, so I put another little swoosh on the one over here, and then I'm watching my other E that I did to make it kind of similar. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my word heroes down at the bottom. So I think, let's see, I think I want my H to come right about here, and I'm going to make this one a big fancier one. And again, you can certainly, you know, make your letters pretty mild, or, you know, without lots of fancy detail on them initially, just to get them into place, and then you can make them fancier. Or you just have nice block letters. That always looks great. This is a bigger word than the ones up top, but I still want to kind of keep similar penmanship. I know I made my H a little bit more fun, but like my E, I want to have kind of a similar font of sorts to it. And then I've got my O, and then I just have two more letters. And then what I'm going to do once I've got my letters on here is I am going to add a little bit of a shadow underneath the letters, to make them kind of stand out a bit more, as if maybe they're of a three-dimensional sort. So I've got that on there. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush real quick. And I'm going to be using watered down black paint. So I'm just adding a touch of water into my black. And for me, I'm going to put a little shadow of sorts on the bottom left-hand side, so of each letter. So I'm going to kind of just almost outline those letters on the left and on the bottom, just to give it a little bit more punch and dimensional element to it. But you can see as I go through these, I kind of fly through once I get going, because I know where I want that shadow to be. And for me, the faster I go on this, the more systematic and more kind of natural and genuine my brush stroke becomes on these letters, and it allows me to, again, use my own penmanship, my painterly penmanship, and get it to be consistent throughout the whole way. If I sit here, stop, and think about it a lot, I'm not as successful. So I just kind of, once I get my rhythm, I just let my hand kind of take over. And if I don't get my shadow in the right spot, or, you know, if I go over my line a bit, I'm okay with that, because I'm going to come back through real quick and just make any corrections or any little modifications that I want. But to me, I'm thinking, if these were three-dimensional, and I'm following the kind of thought process of where the light source was for the other ones, where would I put my little shadows on these? And then I'm just going to quickly wash and dry my brush, and just like my straps, I'm going to pick up some white paint and just do some little highlights. So I could use my wall color again, but it's to do highlights, but it's also just to make sure that when I was doing my black, I didn't overdo it in any spots. So this is also, you know, a good thought to make any corrections if you wanted to. And because I have little areas where my brush got away from me. And then once you've got your words all nice and done and executed, and you've tweaked them enough and you can see them well. That's another thing. You want to make sure that they're bright enough so you can actually see them on top of your sign, because there's no sense in putting words there if you can't see them. So you just want to make sure that you've got them bright enough. And then I will be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your words on here, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to be using black paint, but you could certainly use whatever color you'd like. I think I'm going to sign this one in the bottom left corner. I do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like to be your identifying mark is the way that you should sign it. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really powerful painting with a wonderful message, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.